Okay, perfect.
You ready? All right. What is up, guys? Welcome back to our quarterly Enzyme Finance community call. This is community call number 5. It is December now. We've had an incredible year with Enzyme. Today we'll talk about, as usual, we'll talk to give it a little bit of a background on what is Enzyme. We'll talk about network stats as the protocols continue to grow, even throughout the various market phases that this year has shown us, from bull markets to significant drawdowns to even more growth amongst layer ones, and how the network has remained stable. We'll talk about community contributions, meaning that the protocol has really been expanded on by way more than just the Vanguard team at this point, where we have a lot of individual teams and community members help us build out our product. We'll talk about some ecosystem news, refresh on tokenomics as MRP7 was passed. We're exploring further improvements to the tokenomics. And then towards the end, we'll have Mona join us for a Sulu demo and also give a roadmap of what's coming up in 2022 and so forth, at which point you guys are free to ask any questions and we can go over Q&A. Let's dive in. So, before we get into the nitty-gritty, always want to catch up what Enzyme Finance even is, because somebody might be new on this call. We got full house right now. So Enzyme Finance really serves two different audiences. One, people that want to invest, investors, right? Because in the traditional world, it's hard to find asset managers you can trust, because you need to find the ones with good track record, and a lot of times people want to know, like, what are they investing in, right? And with on-chain asset management, not only are you able to transparently see all the funds on Enzyme and compare and contrast how they've performed over all the various time periods, but also you're able to look inside and see, what are they trading, how have they performed, what are they focused on, what are their rules and restrictions. So investors can join vaults, with proven track record. It's 24/7, meaning you can join any day, you can exit any day, unlike traditional funds where you have long lockups and you have redemption periods and so forth, and make it a little bit more complicated. And it's all non-custodial, which means the assets always belong to you, meaning you put in, let's say, ETH, and then you get Enzyme Fund tokens, meaning you always maintain access over your assets. And meanwhile, the asset manager has trading privileges, but not withdrawal privileges. So that's a huge improvement over traditional asset management, even coming from a traditional asset manager himself. And then from the builder's perspective, when we say builder, this can be many different categories of people. That could be somebody who wants to start a fund, right? An actual asset manager. It could be a DAO, right? A team, a crypto team that says, hey, we have a treasury of 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, $100 million. And we want to allocate with it, but strategically and transparently, right? And that's where Enzyme comes in. And Enzyme is a really cool solution there because it has all the DeFi integrations from lending, staking, trading, AMM pools, pretty much anything you can imagine in DeFi. And that offering is only expanding, especially as we talk about with Sulu towards the end. And at this point, people maybe 2 years ago when I first started supporting Enzyme, there was maybe 20 tokens. We now have scale. We have over 250 tokens, which means most tokens that you can imagine are on Enzyme. And in fact, the amount of tokens we have at this point surpasses many centralized exchanges. With that, to give it just a quick overview of what some of these are, right? At this point, you can lend with Aave and Compound. You can yield farm on Idle and Yearn. You can trade on Uniswap, Paraswap, 0x, and Kyber Network. And you have synthetic assets on Synthetics. And of course, some more LPing and staking and trading using Curve. What's coming up is also really exciting, which is Convex Finance, Balancer, Bancor, and Uniswap V3, right? Which really expands on our trading capabilities. And also finally, borrowing, which is something that's been really highly requested. And what I think really takes on-chain asset management to the next level, because until now, really you only had spot. So now you have some borrowing, some lending, which makes it significantly more advanced to be able to run an on-chain fund. And of course, and this is something that's been asked about a lot, right, for years now. But at least last year when gas fees were high, people said, look, I want to run a $10,000 Enzyme fund, but I'm paying, $300 in gas fees every single time I make a trade. And the thing is, while it is a problem for Enzyme users, it's not really an Enzyme problem. It has more been an Ethereum problem, right? And whether you make that trade on Enzyme or on Uniswap, the gas fee is the same. So to combat that, we're now looking at scaling solutions to enable even, small to medium-sized funds do what they need to do, run their business, but in an affordable fashion. And one big, I guess, branding and structural decision that the Enzyme Council and community made is we realized that a lot of the TVL that Enzyme currently has comes from decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs, because ultimately, DAOs are the ideal customer for an archetype for a platform like Enzyme. Why? Because DAOs nowadays in 2021 literally command hundreds of millions of dollars, some DAOs as much as billions of dollars. And what that means is that these assets, they need to be managed somewhere, right? There's this real money at this point that belongs not to a centralized team, but to a community, a lot of times of multi-stakeholders. So it's important to be managing this money both capital efficiently, where if somebody has 1,000 ETH, that it doesn't just sit in a wallet, but that it does something, right? That it generates yield, or stables, the stables generate yield, and at the same time that all this is done transparently. I think our biggest proof of concept was Untitled Finance, which at this point has moved around $100 million to Enzyme of insurance funds that are generating yield on a daily basis, making the insurance pool so much more capital efficient. And at the same time, all the Untitled users and insurance holders, right, can very transparently track, that their insurance is actually backed by the capital pool, right? So Enzyme has become the greatest tool for DAOs because you can delegate trading, which means that you have the multi-stakeholders using those to say, for example, but then they might say, look, we as a multi-sig, we're not the best at making those trading decisions. So what they can do is delegate the trading to somebody who's actually an asset manager, and that asset manager can then allocate for the multi-sig while not having the withdrawal privileges, which is super important. And the multi-sig can also program risk management and access controls. And it's just an incredible way for any DAO that is sitting on a treasury to generate yield with a treasury that literally where the yield itself might just pay for the entire burn rate of that protocol, allowing it to grow more and faster. And then last one before I give it over to GL, let's talk about some network statistics. So, while we have been over the last, what you're looking at here, right, is all still within 2021. As little as, maybe 9 months ago, Enzyme only had $15 million in TVL. It now has 133 million in TVL. Of course, as the market has cooled down, right, we just had major sell-off with Bitcoin dropping from its highs of 69,000 down to $46,000. Enzyme is holding strong, right? We're still at $133 million in TVL, meaning once we broke the $100 million mark, we essentially never look back. And although there are, the growth has perhaps on a percentage basis slowed a little bit, the strength in its continued growth continues to be there. And, as we saw before, a big contributor were the DAOs like Unslash. So as we bring on more DAOs, we believe that the asset under management will continue to grow rapidly. So since August, since I think this is the last time we spoke, we saw an 18% growth in the amount of vaults on the platform. We saw 28% growth in the asset under management, and we saw a 32% growth in the amount of deposits. Any of these numbers would be fantastic if they were annualized, but this is really just in a few months. So, Enzyme continues to grow strongly. With that, I think I'll give it over to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, indeed. It has been a while since we last talked, indeed, in August, and a lot has happened, both online and in the real world. So the Enzyme team has been present at multiple hackathons, both online, but also in person, engaging with community members, putting out bounties for improvements to the protocol, and generally seeing a lot of interest from developers to write cool new stuff that is useful for Enzyme managers and other users. For example, there is ongoing work for an auto-rebalancing bot, which was started during the DeFi Summer Hackathon. And now also received granting from the council to further work on this. So this will allow managers to automatically rebalance their holdings when market conditions change, which is a very useful feature to have, especially since many platforms don't have limit orders, etc., in the decentralized finance world. So beside that, we also saw people create a bot on Discord to manage a vault in a truly decentralized manner, where you can have different people assign different roles and, for example, allow trading straight from the Discord interface. So quite excited to see that pop up, which can be really useful for different DAOs. We also had a nice integration called Zoduit, which is using superfluid to stream the yield from an Enzyme vault to certain individuals. So really nice use case for yield generation through Enzyme in a decentralized manner to contribute to open source project development. And there are still two integrations ongoing. One is integrating Badger DAO into Enzyme, as well as one for integrating Balancer, which are both nice AMM and yield generating protocols on Ethereum. This isn't all, so there were also a number of in-person workshops, for example, during the Daoist event in Lisbon, where a bunch of people came together to learn about Enzyme and other protocols. To come to some more broader news, there has been some developments in the Enzyme Council DAO. So to give a good example, ourselves, we are now managing the treasury on the Enzyme platform itself. So we added about 3 million's worth of non-operational reserve assets into the treasury, which is controlled through our Gnosis Safe multisig, including delegated trading to Vanguard Finance, which will be restricted to programmable policies. So to have a safe way to delegate trading to a trusted party. This is coming a bit later in the year, but currently we already have the safe setup with a target allocation of about 50% in MLN tokens, so the token underlying the Enzyme platform, as well as an allocation in stablecoins and Ethereum, as a sort of preparation for a potential crypto bear market. So we have enough of stablecoin assets to sustain ourselves going into the future. But it's a nice example just how you can use Enzyme to generate yield and get some diversification going as a treasury. The council also started using snapshot votes to have better transparency. For example, there was a public vote between the council members on whether or not to increase the bug bounty program ahead of the Sulu release, so that proposal passed, meaning there's now a 400K bug bounty live, and there's also some development grants that got funded this way, all to like further the development of the Enzyme protocol. And in other news, since summer, a lot of things happened. For example, Coinbase enabled their Earn program for MLN. If you go to the link above, you can start earning MLN tokens just because of learning about Enzyme. So it's a series of videos and quizzes for all Coinbase users. They will all receive some LMN tokens as a result. There has been a listing of MLN on KuCoins. I think now we're on most of all the big centralized and decentralized exchanges, also like Binance and Coinbase, for example. And the Enzyme team has found and helped to plug a bug in idle finance. So that was like a collaboration with the idle DAO as well on that front. No funds were at risk, but it's good to have a close eye and collaborate in this space to prevent any potential exploit. So shout out to like the Enzyme development team to keep a close eye on that. When it comes to partnerships, also there has been quite some developments. For example, we have Exponent AI, who are creating a very retail-friendly user interface, which runs fully on top of Enzyme. So their open beta actually went live yesterday. You can check it out, try it out. They wrote a different user interface on top of Enzyme in which you can more easily deposit funds and follow some of their strategies. And excitingly, also Celsius, like the big CeFi platform, I would say, announced plans to launch a DeFi product called Celsius X, which will use Enzyme, especially an Enzyme Vault as their sort of storage, where they will bridge and wrap tokens across multiple blockchains. So they are this cross-chain protocol using Enzyme for their security. Just to give you an idea, it's, I think, around 20 to 30 billion assets under management within Celsius, the main company behind it. So I would expect a lot more traction or a big increase in AUM for Enzyme once they roll this out fully. This will also just run on Enzyme on the mainnet deployment. Then some good news for fund managers. So for those who haven't checked yet, head over to Paraswap with your manager account logged into the website, and you might be eligible for a rather big airdrop in Paraswap tokens. So over 100 Enzyme managers who were actively trading within Enzyme might be able to claim these tokens. I got some myself as well. Like, it's a very nice present, I would say, from the Paraswap team. So definitely check that out. We also added a bunch of new assets ranging from Ghost from the Aavegotchi ecosystem, which is a play-to-earn metaverse game, to like Celsius, Bond, Axie Infinity, Gitcoin token, the FTX exchange token, Phantom, and a bunch of others. You can also earn pretty nice yield currently using the Euro S stablecoin on both Curve and Yearn within Enzyme. So we keep adding functionality to the platform, even between big releases. And some good news for Avantgarde Finance, which are currently the main developers on Enzyme. They raised about 5.5 million in a Series A to increase their team size and increase their DeFi offering. So there will be a lot more development going on in their team. So hereby, I gladly give it back to Felix to talk a bit about the upcoming tokenomics change.
Awesome. And maybe Mona, because I know she's in attendees, but I couldn't find you with your name. Maybe you're joining on a different name. Your name is Luca Mossini, so that's a different name. Maybe GLB, you can promote it to panelist while I talk about this. Awesome. So let's talk about the tokenomics refresher. So MLN token value accrual, right? Phase 1 is completed. We've talked about, well, it's going live with Sulu. This is something we've been talking at length about for the last few years under the name of MIP7, or later, as we reprint back, it was called Melon protocol, right? Now Enzyme NZIP7, which is a flat AUM-based fee of 25 basis points, right, on vaults. And as was the case back then, it's a buy and burn mechanism, where now, now that we have, over $100 million, every single year, those 25 basis points are being used to buy and burn MLN tokens, which start adding some, bullish pressure on the MLN token. But really, and the example is that, if we have 10 billion in asset under management, that will equal $25 million in yearly fee collections, And now that, the DeFi space is as large as $270 billion in total, that's not a crazy number anymore, especially when we talk about being the go-to place for onboarding DAOs, being the place that even more centralized places, like, for example, Celsius, use to engage in a decentralized fashion. So that's very bullish, given the fact that, like, in an environment like that, like 10 billion asset under management, 25 million collective fees, that's rather large chunk of Enzyme's FDV. But that's only part 1. Really, part 2 to the tokenomics that we're working on more now is really increasing the utility for MLN tokens in a couple different ways. Finding a useful mechanism for staking MLN, right? Being able to use MLN as collateral. So, for example, once we introduce borrowing and whatnot, and sharing of referral fees. That's something I think is really massive. That will likely be bigger than the basis point fee, right? Because ultimately, long term, most of these DeFi protocols have some kind of mechanism that allows them to share the trading fees that we help bring them, right? So let's assume that we have 10 billion assets under management. Well, 10 billion in assets is more than likely going to do at least 10 times that in annual trading volume, right? I mean, depending on what the turnover is monthly, but that could be a significant amount of volume, right? And most DeFi protocols charge more, like for example, 30 basis points for a single trade, right? So if Enzyme can get a cut of that, right? Whether that's from Synthetics, Idle, Yearn, you name it. And for example, Yearn already has these programs established, right? That itself can likely add several million more in additional income to the Enzyme protocol, which again could further boost the MLN token and make it a truly value accruing asset, which of course is the goal, to make it much more than just the token that represents the network.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see if we can get Mona to speak up.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
But for some reason the video is not working, but it doesn't really matter for me. Cool. All right. So I think, I think the next thing on the agenda is to give you like a tiny teaser for Sulu. So just as a heads up, for those of you who are not aware, we recently announced as a surprise that, I'm being told the video works now. So we recently announced, I think as a surprise, that Sulu, or a version of Sulu has been deployed to Polygon. And the goal here is to start to use Polygon as a bit of a test net, which may or may not be rolled out as a mainnet next year with the blessing of the council. But that's to be decided. But the idea of using Polygon as a testnet is, as some of you know, we did used to use Kovan before, and Kovan didn't give users the full satisfaction because I'm a bit distracted. Is my name turning up as Luca Mossini for some reason?
Yes. That's all. Like, where are you?
I don't know why that is. That's super weird. But anyway, but yeah, so we deployed to Polygon. The idea is that we should be able to use it as a testnet, which can really interact with some of the DeFi integrations, because we have Aave there, we have a couple of curve pools there, Paraswap is obviously there. And so whereas on Kovan, you could basically set up a vault and that was it, and there wasn't much else you could do. Here you can really play around with the integration, get a sense for what Enzyme can do, and imagine all the different use cases. So we announced this as a bit of a surprise last week. It all started when the team was on an offsite in Spain about a month ago, and we just started messing around we had a kind of hack day to play around with layer 2, and before we knew it, Enzyme was being deployed on Polygon, and we haven't really stopped since. And this idea of using it as a test net emerged, and we all really liked this idea. So sorry, my computer is going a little bit crazy. So what I want to do is just give you a teaser. We did open up private beta applications last week. I'm excited to say that we got over 1,500 and close to 1,500 people apply for that beta, which is really exciting to see. We have selected 100 people from that list, and they will be notified, I think, tomorrow or the day after, or soon, very soon, about the next steps, and they'll be notified when the beta begins. I'd like to ask that if any of you have signed up and have been selected, please try really hard to break things and provide us as much feedback as possible before we do the Ethereum mainnet launch in January. We want it to be as smooth as possible. So we really appreciate any feedback that you have. You will probably receive a little bit of Matic to play around with for gas. And when you've completed your feedback and provided some feedback to us, then you'll receive a bit more Matic as a small gift. So I'm just gonna, oh, can you guys enable screen sharing for me? So I'm not going to do a full demo. This is more intended to be like just a quick teaser. Sorry.
You should be able to share. And that's really nice. 1,500 people, that's more than the current user base. So it's like
I was excited.
plus 50%.
You know, a lot of people in the Polygon community got excited as well. So as you can see, this is a completely new UX UI overhaul. We've redone how we do things. You'll see that in the new version, or the new release, we have.
And I don't see it yet.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, same.
All right, let's try again. I was probably sharing the wrong screen.
Yeah, sign into Enzyme. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, the first thing to note is that we have this new sign-in, which wasn't there before. This is optional. What we, so it says optional to sign in with your email. But this is a cool new feature. And the reason we've given you the option to sign up with an email address is so that going forward, you can receive important notifications about anything that's happening in Enzyme. We struggle at the moment whenever there's like an important message to send to a vault manager or whatever. Sometimes we don't always have the contact details for the correct person. Also, when vaults start to upgrade and change, reconfigure things like fees, etc., we want to have a system which can notify investors, depositors of those relevant changes. So you can see that this is the beginning of the basis for that. You can see here we have the ability to switch from one network to the other. And here you can see the completely redesigned interface where we have these now cards which represent different vaults. You can click into a vault and see kind of, you know, more granular information on that vault. And you'll see that we've moved the tab for all the things you can do within your vault to the left side, much cleaner. You can trade, you can interact with pools, stake, yield, borrow from here. Obviously, the functionalities here are limited. Like, for example, borrowing doesn't exist on Polygon because Compound is not there. But all the other functionality is there. You can own more than one vault with different wallets and switch between them. So it would just with this kind of like little fun button here, you can create new vaults with this, and you can also examine network stats. We've also got a, where is it? Yeah, you can see like here we're going down the line of, you know, one piece of feedback that we had a lot during the last release or since the last release was that for depositors coming to the website, it's really hard to find vaults. It's very overwhelming. There's just like pages and pages of vaults to filter through. So we're trying with this new UX UI to have different categories, you know, kind of similar to how you would find in Netflix and, you know, maybe newest vaults, best performing vaults, best ETH performing vaults, most popular vaults, so that you can kind of, you know, guide the users a little bit more towards categories and stats in a more user-friendly way. So this is, you know, just being polished off right now. I'm not going to go into all the functionality right now because we want it to be perfect when we, well, not perfect. We want it to be like kind of, you know, in a good state. So we will do a demo probably on the next community call once we've got all the feedback from the beta testers. But this is a big release. And just as a quick reminder, some of the key features that we're really excited about are the gas relayer. A lot of you have complained in the past about the high gas costs on Ethereum. Now you are able to expense a lot of your transaction costs back to the vault. So this is a really big feature that we're excited about and hope that a lot of you will benefit from. We're also going to have vault share transferability. So when you're configuring your vault in this release, you'll be able to specify, you know, whether this is freely transferable or transferable to a subset of people. You're going to be able to take leverage. So borrowing on Compound will be possible, which enables you to take leverage or to even short tokens, which is great. And really important considering that a lot of the inverse synths have been, if not all, have been deprecated. So this is really cool. Another thing is that we're now able to handle non-fungible positions. So things like convex, Uniswap v3 that are non-divisible, etc., come into play. It means we can integrate a lot more DeFi protocols than we already have. So that's exciting. And then we also have a lot more fees and policies. We also notice, like in the setup process now, you also have a new option of an exit fee. So if if you want to incentivize your investors for the long term, you can impose an exit fee to avoid like a bunch of different behaviors. You're also now able to reconfigure certain parameters intra-release, whereas before you could only upgrade or reconfigure your vault settings at every major upgrade cycle. And this will work very similar to how an upgrade works. You signal a reconfiguration. Once you signal it, investors have 7 days to react to those new changes before they take effect. And that keeps things as decentralized as possible. And then last but not least, there's going to be single asset redemption possible. So I know a lot of you didn't like the redemption as a slice. Some of you loved it. Some of you didn't like it so much. But now it's going to be an option. You can specify single asset or more than one single asset. And you can also configure how much of that single asset you're prepared to let someone redeem or a bunch of people redeem. So a ton of new features. The only other thing to mention maybe is with all the increasing functionality and with all the increasing integration and position types, especially with what we refer to as external positions, that's the non-fungible tokens, the non-fungible positions. New functionality is great, but it also introduces new considerations. And so we've designed as much as possible. I strongly recommend anyone who's going to be using the protocol heavily to read the audits and to understand the implications of using, different integrations and different adapters, because as a starting point, until now, Enzyme it's never been simple, but it's been relatively simple until now. But with all this new functionality, the configuration matters both to the fund manager, the vault manager, and to the investors. And so I do recommend that anyone who's going to use this heavily either refers to the audits and the documentation or asks as many questions as possible. And we have tried as hard as possible in the interface, in the setting up vault phase, to indicate to help guide users with pre-configured templates. So you'll see that when you start testing and when we eventually launch. So I think I'm going to stop on the kind of teaser here. So I'll stop sharing my screen. And do we have the slides somewhere? Did they disappear?
Yeah, I'll share them again.
Cool.
If Felix allows me. Okay.
Should we host? And if you guys have any questions, you can either use the chat or the Q&A. Probably a good time to start dropping them in. Definitely love it.
Yeah, so then, yeah, totally agree. If anyone has any questions, we'll take them at the end, I think. But yeah, the only other thing we want to talk about is just a little bit of a teaser for 2022. None of this has been approved by the council yet, but these are just our suggestions to the council. And Avantgarde would like to start working towards a more DAO targeted type of fund type, or let's not even call it a fund, but let's call it a vault type, or even just an account. So it is a lot lighter because it only ever has one investor, which is the DAO itself. And so in that respect, it could be an account rather than a fund or rather than a vault. And because of this lighter, architecture, we can also, hopefully become a lot more interoperable with DAO tools much faster. And then the second thing we want to do is expand the asset universe beyond. Until now, in terms of primitive assets, we have been limited to the Chainlink price feed. Something that we want to try and achieve for the next release is the ability to hold assets that don't have a Chainlink price feed, and the ability to insert price feeds from other third parties other than Chainlink if one does not exist. Which ties into the third point. There's a huge market in kind of venture type investing or pre-funding projects where you pay something out upfront, but then receive a token at a future date. This is something we also want to be able to hold, and this will be kind of challenging how in the past we've been challenged by how to price this and how to let something go out of the vault without something coming back in. But this is something we want to tackle now for this particular use case. We definitely want to rethink, this idea of one denomination asset. We're going to go back to the drawing board on that and see whether it's possible to have a denomination asset for the purpose of a performance fee, but potentially allowing different assets to be used as investment assets. As many of you may have guessed by now, we're also very heavily thinking about layer 2 strategy now, and also other layer 1 strategy. I think 2022 will be the year where we talk a lot more about our plans there. We have been working pretty hard on our thinking process there and our strategy there, and hopefully it will come together in a form where we can present it in 2022 and announce that. And last but not least, obviously, as always, we want to maximize the number of integrations that we're doing. Some of the integrations that we've talked about recently have been Convex, Ohm Staking, Sushi, Bancor, and Orion. And I think these are actually probably not ordered correctly in terms of timing. But I would say that at least Ohm looks like it's coming soon. Also, Uniswap V3 should be on this list. Also, Pool Together should be on this list. And probably a couple of others I'm forgetting, but these are the ones that we are looking to come out with in the next kind of, 3 to 4 months, I'd say. So, I think I will stop there. I don't know if there was more to the slides, or if there's, oh yeah. Who's doing this section? Is it me? I can.
Yeah, you can go ahead. You probably know more about it than we do.
Yeah, I guess, and this is the last part, I think, from memory. But yeah, I think maybe just on a closing note, as you probably gathered in the last kind of half an hour, we have had a really big year in terms of things happening in the Enzyme ecosystem. We've had a couple of really big releases. We've had, I think probably half a dozen to a dozen projects now building on Enzyme, and doing something really interesting. We've had we've been involved in all the major hackathons. We've been involved in several conferences, and we, as Gilles mentioned, we've appeared on lots of different exchanges. We've been involved in learning videos like Coinbase Earn programs, etc. And we feel that a lot of this doesn't get as much airtime. Oh yeah, the other thing we've been doing is starting to think about DAO tooling and how to improve DAO treasury and DAO tooling in general. I think as one of the oldest DAOs, or maybe the oldest DAO in DeFi, we are just as frustrated as everyone else about the lack of DAO tooling around. So we're starting to contribute quite heavily in that area. And we just feel that maybe there's so much cool, exciting stuff going on. We want to share more of it with our community. And so we've decided to put together this virtual summit, which is a continuation of what we used to call M0 and M1. We used to do these in person in Switzerland. We skipped last year's because of COVID, or maybe the year before's. And we thought, hey, let's come back and do this again, and let's do it virtually. So we're partnered with Dystopia Labs. They're going to do this, and we're going to have a 2-day summit where we'll showcase a lot of the cool things happening on Enzyme, a lot of the cool partnerships that we're working on. And we'll deep dive into the tech stack, the future roadmap, which I just touched on a bit now, but we'll go into more detail on that. And the idea is for community to have a say, to give feedback, to ask questions, to get to know other projects, to see, what's happening in the space, and it's all free. So, and it's all digital, so it's really easy to attend.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's a great lineup. Like just some of the speakers here, but there's plenty more. So definitely looking forward to that. I just wanted to like wrap up a bit before we head to the questions. That there is this feature on the Enzyme website. Well, it's enzyme.kenny.io, where you can submit your requests for improvements of the website or for the protocol. And if you have any feature you would like to see added, just add it in there, and you can get it being looked at by the Enzyme team, and we'll make sure to prioritize anything that needs to be. So there are some things that are already been added right now that came up through the community board here, like Yearn and some other features as well. So, okay, I see there are quite some questions in the chat. So maybe we can tackle some of those. Felix, I'm not sure if you want to kick it off.
Yeah. So I think the first one I saw was when is Sulu expected to launch unrestricted and fully on Polygon? Betas right now, or coming soon, Mona, correct? And then it will launch with everything else in January with Sulu, correct?
We still have a few wrinkles to sort out, and we need to get council approval. But yeah, if the council approves and if we solve the couple of wrinkles, there's a bit of a bit more work to do to get to mainnet. I'd say January is probably overpromising a bit, but we're definitely aiming to take. There were a couple of complications, mostly on the fee side. How we'll deal with fees on Polygon that are still not totally clear to us. We're discussing those issues with the Polygon team, but other than that, as long as the council approves and we iron out a couple of those smaller issues, yeah, pretty soon. I mean, it should be Q1 if there's enough demand. So that's a really important thing, by the way. If you're going to use Polygon, please let it be known, because we're also looking to see how much demand there is for it. Maintaining an entire new deployment is a lot of work. And so we want to make sure that there's support behind this. So please do let us know your thoughts, what you're planning to do with it, etc., as that will all feed into the council decision and help bring it to mainnet faster.
What about integrating with 1inch as an exchange option? Asks Victor.
Yeah, we love 1inch. We've spoken to the team before. The only thing is that we have Paraswap at the moment, which is provides a very similar service. So in terms of value add, the priorities from users, if you look at the Canva board, are coming more in terms of new integrations, like people want options, convex protocol, which is higher yield. We're not getting, there isn't a ton of difference between the slippage on Paraswap and 1inch. So we're not getting a lot of demand for that. But it's definitely something that we want to do. We're really big fans of that project as well. But we it's just not a priority because we have a similar, an adapter that provides a similar function already.
And second question from Jonathan is, are there any plans for fiat on-ramps?
Yes, there are. My question back to Jonathan would be, would a fiat on-ramp like Wire or one of those suffice? They all have like sort of limits at around $10,000, but they seem to be what most of the DeFi community use. If so, yes, we're planning on doing something like that quite soon.
And I think when you say Wire, you mean WYRE as in the company, yeah. Wire as in the wire transfer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Leo asked also, I forgot about, regarding Kenny, what is with the things which are under review? Well, I guess the under review, we're looking at them. We're considering integrating.
Yeah, I think so, yes. So they're not yet planned, but they're being looked at by the team, whether they're feasible or not. At least that's my understanding of that label.
There's another question I'm seeing. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
There was another question I was saying about when is Sulu Ethereum launch? So we were going to do that Ethereum launch before Christmas, But because testing on Ethereum is going to be extremely expensive with gas prices, we thought it would be better to refine Sulu on Polygon first over the Christmas period and then launch on Ethereum in January so that the Ethereum launch is smooth. Users don't make UX UI mistakes that cost them a lot of gas and then they have to redo it and we don't end up getting a ton of complaints. So I think that the plan is, run a 2 to 3 week beta, which will probably hopefully start very soon in the next day or two. And basically tidy up all the, again, I'm going to emphasize this, but if you have been selected for the beta, please try to break as many things as you can and provide us with as much feedback as you can. We really want the smoothest, coolest launch ever on Ethereum. So the more feedback you give us, the more things you try to do with the vault and the more things you try to experiment with, the more information we have and the more tools we have to help make it a really big, successful launch. So yeah, we're planning to do Polygon beta imminently, and then in January Ethereum.
Indeed, I see there was a question from Mohammed Kale, whether there is a way to view which assets are currently on Enzyme and which are more popular. There is. It's in the Enzyme network monitor on the main site. I posted the link in the chat as well. You can sort the different assets by their total value locked. For example, currently the biggest holding in Enzyme vaults is staked Ether in a curve vault, where you can get some nice yield on Ethereum. But you can check out all the assets in there.
Right. And then there's also some more general comments. I think one was from Vidush saying that Polygon event will be huge in India because they are small ticketed retail investors who want exposure to cryptocurrencies but don't know much about it. Yeah, I know we've seen kind of like a bifurcation between the two different audiences we have, which is on one hand retail, which has been priced out ever since ETH gas fees really spiked this year, because we've even had ideas like trading competitions and whatnot, but they didn't really make too much sense while gas fees were so high, because if somebody has a $10,000, let's say, vault, $500 gas fees don't make sense. On the flip side, we had seen quite success with, DAOs or bigger treasuries and whatnot. So I think this two-chain model now will allow us to build for both, meaning the DAOs, they likely want the security of ETH, then they don't mind paying higher gas fees. And then the regular retail traders, can find a home on Polygon where it's very quick and cheap to manage their accounts. And really start building their fund. And then if they ever become so large, they say, hey, I'd rather do it on ETH with maybe a couple more capabilities and the security of Ethereum, they can then migrate down. So I think Polygon will be a great launchpad. Let's see. There's a question about the MLN token. I'm not sure if that's something we can comment on. I think it's just important to view this long term. Obviously, if we talk about tokenomics a little bit, if Enzyme gets more traction, gets more users, it will start accruing more value, and then ultimately this is a long-term perspective.
Yeah, so far the token utility has been very limited, or it's only now is coming into play, with some of the assets from the vault being converted into MLM tokens as a sort of flat fee. So this would mean that with more usage of the platform, at least more MLM will get bought and burned. Whether that actually results in a price increase, we'll have to see. But it's finally in a stage where things will start moving, I think, when it comes to this.
And I think everything's relevant since the last all-time high was less than 90 days ago. So, I know it's crypto, but I think a little bit of patience doesn't hurt. Let's see, were there any others? Any other questions you guys want to ask? Let's see if there's the questions chat. Otherwise, any final comments from you, Mona or Gio?
Actually, yes. Just one other thing I think is interesting, which I wanted to touch on and sort of forgot, which is just that what I think is really exciting about Sulu and the integrations coming is the idea that you can build these meta strategies on top of Enzyme. So we're seeing a lot of Uniswap v3 strategies being created, like Charm Finance and Visor, etc. But those are very kind of, you know, one track minded in a way. And I see the future as, you know, liquidity strategies that are, you know, tapping into more than just one liquidity pool, but maybe some combination of Uniswap v3 and Sushi Swap and, you know, Curve pools and because, you know, really as a market maker, as a liquidity provider, you should be going wherever the opportunity is best and not just building a strategy around one protocol. And I think at this point, Enzyme is the only infrastructure that enables you to do all of those, you know, build these meta strategies, not just in liquidity provision, but also in yield and also in options. Like we're seeing a lot of interesting, like ribbon finance, you know, if we were to integrate open in Q1, if there was demand for it, we could build a lot of ribbon-like strategies as well on Enzyme. So I think that's a really important point. I want to bring someone from the community to present on that in Q1 in the next community call too, just to make everyone aware of all the possibilities. And if you're thinking of building any of these strategies or something that I haven't mentioned, please reach out to us because we love nothing more than to build around real use cases. So yeah, that's just a last kind of leaving thought that I had.
Awesome.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Yeah, I also just want to add that I think it's a really great development that we'll now be able to interact with Enzyme on a cheaper chain as well. Like it does open up the floodgates to a lot more users who might be priced out currently. So really excited to see this evolution going into the next year.
Awesome. Yeah, and I love the new design, the new UI UX. I think it just, now it starts to really look, I remember what it looked like when I first came on, like in June of last year. It looked very much like the 90s. Now we're like really fintech. I mean, this is, yeah, I love it. You know, I think a normal person, a non-crypto person can get lost on this page now and maybe even forget that it's run on blockchain, which I think is kind of the place crypto always needs to get to. And even I noticed that, you know, it now has either, you know, connect with MetaMask, but also log in with email, which I think is a great feature to onboard the normies, because ultimately, if you want, like the vault managers will be the ones that, you know, are very familiar with DeFi. But if you want to raise money from people that aren't very techy, I think that's a huge feature. So.
It just made me remember one other thing that I forgot to mention. Really important feature about Sulu that we all forgot to talk about was that we're opening up the idea of adapters and policies. Previously, you could only add an adapter or policy if it was whitelisted by the council. But going forward, if that's a bottleneck to people, you're able to develop your own adapters and policies external and add them into the protocol without whitelisting from the council. They might not necessarily be available on the interface, but we can totally open up, yeah, basically like adapters. So any integrations that we're not bringing to you fast enough, you can do yourself. Any fees and any policies are now going to be open for anyone to integrate and to add to the protocol.
There's one more message from Mohammed that just came. Oh no, there's a couple. Mohammed says, I would like to offer it as a suggestion. When viewed from the outside, it is difficult to understand whether Enzyme is an exchange or an indicator system based on the measurability and transparency of transactions on exchange. Could you consider a video to make it easier to understand animation-based?
The short answer to that is we're going to be doing a bunch of videos next year. Yeah, it's actually like been mentioned a few times in our priorities as the team grows. Like, funnily enough, Luca Mossini, who is not me, but is going to be like pioneering that or like pushing that forward. He's been very vocal about the lack of video content around. And I've also just worked out why we are all logged in as Luca Mossini, because he shared his link with a few people before the call. We didn't realize that it was going to log us in as himself. So.
Yeah, there's like 7 of you. and I think Bro said, will you use email as a means to streamline communication to the users?
Yeah, that's the idea. Yeah, for those who want it, we're not going to force it, but for those who want to be made aware of upgrades or any security issues or any changes to the vault or the contracts, the idea is that we have a quick and easy way to contact you, whereas right now it's actually quite a hard thing. If we need to contact the vault manager or alert somebody of something, it's hard to do.
Awesome.
Yeah, sounds great. So thanks everyone for being here with us. I think we're also at the hour, so I think we can indeed wrap it up. So looking forward to chatting to all of you in a month or two. And yeah, testing out Sulu and continuing.
Hope you guys have an amazing rest of your week, and thanks for joining in. And the future looks bright. Let's do it. Take care, everyone.
Bye.